Is it just naive of me to believe that there ought to be no, declared or not, there shouldn't be an exchange of money between a big pharma company that seeks to profit from selling a drug and any facet of the medical professionals and the regulatory bodies that are supposed to oversee the activities all across the piece? That simply shouldn't be there, declared or not. But in what world really would you think that there wasn't something peculiar about a gamekeeper accepting money from a fox in relation to his protection of a shed full of chickens? It makes people suspicious. Why don't they just have an absolutely impermeable border between themselves and the companies that seek to profit from health?
I would entirely agree with that. I think the argument against it would be, I don't agree with it, but I'm just saying the argument would be that actually it is not uncommon for industry regulators to be funded by the industry they regulate, which I don't buy. I agree. I think it creates an obvious on its face conflict. I think the issue, which, we talk quite a lot about financial conflicts, the issue particularly when it comes to the topic of regulatory capture, which is as significant, if not more than the financial conflict, is the conflict in personnel. So if you look at the MHRA itself, the MHRA board, the MHRA is obviously the UK's chief medicines regulator. If you look at the composition of their board of directors and also the board of directors of various of its supposedly independent advisory panels, there is a significant portion of those people who have current paid roles within the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, there is a review panel to the MHRA, which is effectively the body that reviews and supervises the MHRA's decisions. So it's like the regulator of the regulator almost. And rather unbelievably, the person at the helm of that review panel has a directorship at CEPI, which, as you know, is effectively a vaccine clearinghouse. So, you couldn't make it up.
It's impossible, isn't it? I mean, in the face of information like this, in the face of sort of incomplete stories like this, in as much as, that we were scratching on the surface, tip of the iceberg sort of stuff, but it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes a person wonder about the extent to which money eventually goes into the wallet of an individual. It's one thing to say, well, whatever, the Royal College of GPs was receiving funding of some sort from a big pharmaceutical company. That's kind of like from one corporation to another. But another reason for not behaving like this, by which I mean the behaviour of the Royal College of GPs in not declaring this conflict of interest, it invites speculation, doesn't it? Right across the piece, where members of the public think, well, who's driving around in a new Mercedes car on account of the opinion they were prepared to suppress in themselves, or the press release they were effectively prepared to read out on behalf of a company seeking profit?
I think that's exactly right. And I think particularly when the sums are significant and, you could frame a case saying that the 50 grand and 100 grand given to the Royal College of GPs, that's probably not a career making amount, but sometimes those amounts are. We've talked about Imperial College. There's also, if you look at, say, an institution like the Wellcome Trust, which gives hundreds of millions of pounds of money, often that institution itself is connected with the pharmaceutical industry and vaccine manufacturers in particular. And, the flows of money are huge, and it is incredibly naive to think that individuals don't benefit from that. And it might not be a new Mercedes. It might just be as simple as needing to maintain a living to pay for their kids to go to private school. It's not necessarily an invidious motive, but it is still enough of a conflict to mean that these things, I think you are entirely right, not only should be declared, but if you have a significant conflict in a meeting, particularly an important meeting like this one was, why are you in that meeting?
To me, is also, while I've got you here, Molly, I think it goes to the broader picture of the state of health provision in our country.
Yeah.
I mean, increasingly it seems to me that in Britain, where we certainly are not high up on the league table of, good results from our healthcare, for which we pay through the nose. And the NHS, by some estimates, Britain is a health service with an economy tacked loosely onto the side of it. And we live in this world where right through that, the COVID debacle, we were all witness to the way in which other ideas about approaching treatment were demonised. Not just set aside, but actually made illegal. So people talking about ivermectin, for example, were just that wasn't just regarded as a fringe theory. That was almost criminalised. To talk about other ways of approaching this. And increasingly, I listen to, because I've become obsessive about it now. And I was listening to Dr. John Campbell talking about calcifediol, which is some sort of extract of vitamin D that you can buy over the counter in Spain. You can buy over the counter in France. And it introduces a top up of vitamin D to your immune system much more quickly than taking supplements. And all the talk as well amongst people like Professor Angus Dalgleish and others about fenbendazole, and you're dismissed as a dog medicine and may or may not have potential for cancer treatment and all of the rest of it. And then when you get right down to the basics, like, the way in which people talking about boosting your vitamin D, boosting your vitamin C, taking it in conjunction with vitamin K2 and zinc and all of the rest of it was going to bolster your natural immunity to these things. Why isn't our health service in its totality approaching health in that way, rather than attending meetings with companies from which it's taking funds at whatever level to promote those products?
I know.
In short, I think the whole thing's rotten from head to toe.
The whole thing is rotten. It's absolutely rotten. And I think we have a responsibility here. We've become very lazy and we've become very reliant on pharmaceutical solutions or someone else to solve our problems. We've seen this with the weight loss jabs, aren't we? All these people holding out this panacea of health. It's not health. It's a jab. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work for some time for some people, but you can't seriously think that is the answer to cure the nation's health. And it's amazing. And, just anecdotally, really, it's amazing how much pushback you get, I think, if you try and live healthily. And, I'm saying so slightly off topic, but I think it is also related because I've got a 11-year-old and she is very, into eating healthily and, trying to be organic whenever you can. And it's really opened my eyes how hard it is. Our health is a function in part of what we put into our bodies, right? And one of the big issues is the food industry, and in similar ways, the industry that's just rotten to the core and conflicted and offers perverse incentives to keep us unfit, as the pharmaceutical industry often does. But it's eye-opening to see the pushback you get when you try and eat healthily. She has become very much an outlier in her school environment for refusing deep-fried chips. And I'm being a bit facetious, but actually it's the same, I think, with adults and exercise. If you are adamant about doing your 10 or 20,000 steps a day and walking and moving, I generally don't, I'm going to sound very sanctimonious now, and I don't mean to, but I don't like doing Zoom calls because I think, why sit at a desk when you really don't have to be? And, sometimes you do, but by and large, you can do that on a phone and you can move, but people don't like that. I've noticed. And, there's a kind of expectation that actually you're sort of working against the tide, I think, if you're like that. And I don't think we can expect our health service to be healthy unless we're prepared to be healthy.
You preface that by saying it's off topic almost. I think it is topic. Mm-hmm. I think it is precisely the topic. And when you pull back from that, and you look at people who are developing an approach to living that you're talking about in relation to your daughter and in relation to yourself, when you pull back and you set that alongside what we've just been talking about, that a group, an august body, the very sound of the title, the royal, with the assent of the king, the Royal College of GPs, the whole, it's it's embroidered with the notion that these are people of high standing that you can trust, and yet they're going into meetings to advocate a jab, an experimental gene therapy for children.
I know. While
the institution itself, if not the individuals, have in the background an undeclared trousered lucre banknotes in return for behaving like that. And when you say that there's pushback from an 11-year-old who wants to eat, healthy food and get plenty of exercise, in that, when you look at those components of the same big picture, you have to think that the necessity for root and branch clear out of these filthy Augean stables of, quite frankly, rank corruption.
I couldn't agree more. And there is no, if I was in power, I would start with health. It is such a hindrance to this country. And it is so sad. It is so sad when you just walk down we're just in a local little village. When you walk down our little high street now, you see how many adults and kids are so overweight and unfit. And you just think, gosh, if you're like that at age 13, what is this going to be like when you're 30? And I just think we just go about it in entirely the wrong way. And I think a point, actually, just to pick up on a point you made, which I think is so important, that somehow, and it goes back to this, like, who should have the moral high ground here? Somehow these organizations have managed to reverse the burden and the expectation. So we saw this so much in the pandemic, where those of us who until 2020 would have been seen as the moderate, so maybe let's not give our children experimental, mRNA technology, maybe let's get them outside, exercising, being healthy, we were suddenly seen as the extremists. And yet the people who were arguing for what objectively were incredibly extreme behaviors. I can't think of doing anything more extreme than jabbing 5-year-old with an experimental drug, jabbing pregnant women. You are insane. I'm sorry. It's insane and it's unforgivable. Absent a really clear clinical need. And I don't dispute that there may have been that for some people. I vehemently dispute there was that for your average 10-year-old. And that is extreme, callous, reckless behavior. Yet it was presented as the reasonable and moderate option.
I've said till I'm blue in the face that, when this started, I was oblivious. I trusted. I've had whatever. I thought that the establishment was there to look after me, whether they were Tory or Labour or Liberal or whatever. I thought they were there for me. And, at the start, I thought, COVID must be something to fear. Maybe hiding in your house till it goes away is the right thing to do. I don't know. And then the talk of a jab, right? Okay, I was just listening. Right? Okay, and then I had this Damascene moment, and it's because of that. It's that trajectory. It's because I went from naivety and having it all wrong on account of my own laziness and my own failure to pay attention for long enough, that now when I look at it, I'm so upset on my own account and on everybody else's account. And for example, when there's talk, obviously we're the looming inauguration of a new administration in the White House. Now, make America healthy again, and RFK Jr. has spoken for years about jabs and all of the rest of it.
Yeah.
A big one for me is going to be on day one or soon thereafter. The mRNA platform has to be withdrawn on safety grounds. And if it's not, if there's a workaround put in place by the incoming administration saying, let's just take a breath and see if we can tweak this, then that for me will be, I'll be ready for game over on any administration anywhere that doesn't say mRNA and lipid nanoparticles out.
Yeah, it will be a very good test, won't it? And I think many of us have had our eyes opened. There are many that haven't, though. It was very surprising yesterday listening to the COVID inquiry where Hugo Keith, who's the lead counsel for the inquiry, stood up and, he made a very sweeping statement that I wouldn't have batted an eyelid at a few years, saying, vaccines are unquestionably a public health good. That was his statement. And I think there are many of us, and, I got my kids jabbed, I honestly, I don't know what I do now. I'm very glad I don't have to be, I don't have to think about it. I am now not, I'm not sufficiently naive to take that statement without at least questioning it and thinking about it. And I think there will be a lot of parents that feel like that. And I think it shows a particular mindset of someone who, and I'm not saying it's not a valid opinion to have, you know, of course it may well be, but I think it shows a particular mindset that we have a person who is the lead counsel to our COVID inquiry who is still very much in that unblinkered headspace.
Yeah. I think when I calm down, I spend a lot of my time really, really angry. But when I calm down, it occurs to me that something incredibly dangerous has been done here, which really boils down to a complete loss of trust for perhaps the significant number of people in too many aspects of the institutions that are there for us. And that's dangerous because there are real threats to health and life and liberty out there. There are things to which a collective response on behalf of a well-educated, critically thinking, independent, freedom-loving population is critical. You know, that we would respond to a real threat to health or whatever. And I mean, for example, I mean, you're just to be flippant, actually, you know, I listened to Joe Rogan doing his stand-up act some months back, and he said, you know, 5 years ago, I would have said vaccination was the greatest gift that science has given us. And by now, I don't believe we went to the moon. You know, I mean, he's a stand-up comedian, and he was being deliberately, you know, he was being deliberately controversial. But in essence, there's something very, very important there that he is highlighting with comedy. Which, you know, when it comes to, you know, we got our kids' childhood vaccines and all of the rest of it in that same trusting mindset. I wouldn't do it now. No. And to me, that my faith in the institutions is completely gone, and that is a challenge going forward, because now the population, or many parts of the population, simply and honestly and with good heart, don't know who to trust. And that's problematic.
I couldn't agree more. It is very problematic. And, of course, it allows for malign bad actors to move in too. I mean, I'm quite uneasy looking at how Elon Musk is being heralded as a saviour, and, you know, particularly by elements of the right-wing press and in this country. And you think, oh, well and good, you know, I have a huge amount of time for what he has done in opening up the, you know, X and debate and free speech. But you just think it shows you, it's a very clear illustration of how in a very disillusioned population, a very loud voice can take sway. And, you know, we have many historical precedents to kind of hint at the dangers of that.
Yeah, I mean, the faith in, I've before, you know, Elon Musk was saying what he's been saying and doing what he's been doing, you know, I had sort of internalized the idea that you don't want to go trusting billionaires, because people who've been such beneficiaries of a system are almost by definition unlikely to really rock the boat of the hand that has fed them. I mean, and then whatever Elon Musk has done in relation to X and freedom of speech, he is ultimately a military contractor. Yeah. You know, his significant billions, you know, come from helping governments do things in space. You know, it's not, you know, you got to. All I'm saying is you've got to pay that in mind, and I think people, we're still in this very difficult liminal space where people don't know who to trust. But rather than kind of, if we all accepted that we have to be educated by ourselves if necessary, and critically thinking and governing ourselves, the desperation, the inclination to look for a hero is probably, you know, people go, oh, right, well, these are bad people, but now we can trust this person, and this person. You think, well, no, they're cast out of the same mould. You might like what they're saying at the moment, but they've come from the same... You know, they're the product of the same machine that you've had problems with in the past. We're not going far enough to addressing the root problem.
No, we're not. And you've talked about it. I think I see comments of yours on X probably flash up that I, you know, invariably always agree with. But the one of them actually is we're going to have to do it ourselves. Like, you know, we kind of have huge hope for new political movements. And, you know, I know Reform are doing very well and all the rest of it. But actually, I've yet to see a party come and address the kind of problems you and I talk about, you know, get back to the basics on health, integrity, kind of free speech, like those kind of a sort of party of principles rather than discrete policies, I hope for, but is yet to come.
Just before I let you go, Molly, I think one last, idea to hear your opinion, to hear your opinion about. I wonder, in relation to what your Freedom of Information request has unearthed in relation to the Royal College of GPs, am I right in thinking that this is potentially a bigger story? Are you going to pursue this wherever it takes you?
Oh, yes. So we've got quite a lot more coming on this. We will be releasing bits on, so we have a new YouTube channel, partly born out of, we haven't really talked about it, but partly born out of the difficulty of getting any stories that touch on the vaccine into mainstream press. It is a depressing state of affairs still to be in. There are a few journalists, Camilla Turner, who publish the Royal College of GPs, ones are very notable, brilliant exceptions to that rule, but it has been a very difficult press environment. And so we will be releasing some of that on our new YouTube channel, UsForThem YouTube channel, and some of it hopefully will be popping up in press. But there are an awful lot of conflicts to wade through, and some of the sums are really quite staggering.
Please continue to see me as a potential outlet
absolutely,
for some of your ire.
That was a given.
Please do. Please do.
Always.
Yes. Molly Kingsley, UsForThem. UsForThem have been such a David and Goliath presence. I've been so moved by UsForThem and your determination, starting from very small, a kickstart operation that began just coming from such a good place. And I'll always say all power to your elbow as you keep standing up for kids. So thanks very much, Molly Kingsley.
Neil, and likewise, it's always an honour to talk to you.
Delighted. Thanks, Molly. We'll speak again soon.